Welcome, everybody, to the first episode of Everybody Needs a Nudge. That's the name of our podcast here. We'll get into a little bit of how that name came about, the story behind that name. I'm going to give you a little background information on myself, and then we'll get into crowd lending and sort of how we ended up where we are. So Everybody Needs a Nudge, or Everyone Needs a Nudge, is a name, a play on a name, my nickname, which has been around for a long, long time. Originated with my father, Bob Najarian. As you can tell by the last name, it's a play on the last name. And Bob grew up in Brighton, and he was called Nudge. So he's the original Nudge, and as time went on, he became Big Nudge, and I became Little Nudge, and I had a brother who was also a Nudge. But so he grew up in Brighton. He started dating my mother when they were about 10 or 11 years old. And the fun fact there is my mother didn't know my father's real name until they were about 16 or 17 years old. So she, to this day, they're 80 years old, still calls my father Nudge. And he's Uncle Nudge to all of my cousins. So the name goes back, God, it's got to go back 70 years now. And as I was coming up, the first time the name or the nickname got stuck on me was at youth baseball, Little League. I had a catcher's mitt, and instead of writing my first name, which is Dan, on the catcher's mitt to make sure I didn't lose it, my mother wrote Nudge. And I still have that catcher's mitt. I still have it at the house. The Nudge has worn off of that, but the nickname stuck with me. So it grew up in Hanover. It carried through youth baseball, through youth hockey, and all the way through. I went from Hanover, I went to Thayer Academy for high school. There was a couple of guys in Hanover that carried the nickname from Hanover over to Thayer Academy. The nickname carried from Thayer Academy up to Boston College with some of my classmates from Thayer that went on to Boston College. It carried all the way through from Boston College into Suffolk Law School. Again, sort of a hockey connection. The guys from Hanover that went up to Thayer were playing hockey. The nickname carried through there. And then the same thing from the hockey guys from Thayer that went on to play at Boston College. I did not play hockey at Boston College. I realized that golf was my sport, so I actually went on and played golf at Boston College. But the nickname stuck, and the nickname stuck all the way through up and until now, when I currently coach a lot of hockey, and the nickname is carried, and now I'm called Coach Nudge. So that's where the name comes from. There's a theory out there called the Nudge theory. I didn't know this. My friend Mark Gammons, who we will have on this show at some point, he's a golf professional, head golf professional at Black Rock Country Club. He actually told me that there's a theory called the Nudge theory out there. I haven't looked it up, but essentially it's what we're talking about here. Everyone needs a nudge, and all these little nudges sort of guide you through life and influence your path. That's sort of what this show is going to be about. How do you get where you are and sort of the influences on your life? And so backing up to my influences on life, as I said, I went to Thayer Academy. From Thayer Academy, I went on to Boston College, played some golf at Boston College. Then I went to Suffolk Law School, got my law degree, met my wife, who also has her law degree. So again, there's one of those little nudges, right? I go on to law school, that little nudge to law school. I end up meeting my wife. That little nudge turns into 3 kids and a white picket fence in Duxbury, a town on the South Shore. And a law practice or law career that started in 2005 when I got over the bar. 2001 when I passed the bar. From 2001 to about 2005, I was a prosecuting attorney in the Middlesex District Attorney's Office, mostly in the district court. After that, I went out into private practice as a criminal defense attorney, and I was with a couple of firms from 2005 and 2009. And in 2009, I opened up my own law practice. And sort of the nudge to do that was I had a situation at work where, let's just say I wasn't getting along with my boss at the time. And I think at that point in 2009, I realized that it wasn't necessarily the bosses that were giving me trouble. It was the fact that I was a bad employee. So that little nudge gave me the confidence and the drive to go out and open my own practice in 2009. In 2009, I met a guy by the name of Paul McRae, another individual that we'll have on this podcast. He's actually, I think he has his own podcast, but he's a big South Shore guy, lives in Marshfield. I was connected to him through somebody that I met at Boston College. Again, there's that little nudge factor, nudging me along in my career. And Paul and I joined forces. He was sort of a business development guy, and I was the lawyer. And we teamed up, and we were together until about 2016, 17. And we did all kinds of real estate stuff. We did a whole bunch of loan modifications during the time coming out of the recession, the real estate market crash of 2008. We did a whole bunch of loan modifications. That spun off into doing real estate closings. And he went out and drove business, and I did the real estate closings. And it was a nice, great little partnership. In 2015, I was doing some real estate work for a longtime friend of mine by the name of Chris Fumara. And Chris, who's now my business partner and has been my business partner for the last 7 years, came to me with an idea in 2015 to open up what is now crowd lending. And the idea was essentially, let's raise some money, let's make some hard money loans, do some private lending, and he wanted me to set up the entities to do that. I was doing his legal work. He's a developer in Newport, Nantucket, has some properties in Boston, and I was doing all his legal work. And he came to me with this idea and said, hey, will you set up the entities, the LLCs and all that stuff and get the ball rolling? And at the time, I had my own practice for about 7 years, and sort of had that 7-year itch. And this was the exact nudge that I needed to sort of get on to the next part of my career. And I said, hey, Chris, I'd love to help you out, love to set it up, but I also want to be part of it. So him and I formed a partnership. We didn't know a lot about private lending. We knew a lot about real estate, him on the development side, me on the legal side, from our years of practicing. During the time that I was practicing law, I was also flipping houses. And again, that's sort of had a client, I don't want to backtrack here, but had a client that came to me, 5 friends from Brockton came to me. They wanted to flip houses. 5 was too many. They didn't have any money to pay me. I said, look, I won't take any money. Just give me a piece of the profit when you sell this property that you're flipping on Russell Street in Plymouth. Through the course of the deal, 3 or 4 of the partners bailed out, and it became me and one other individual. And so I got into house flipping. Again, there was the nudge that I needed to get into house flipping. These other guys dropped out. They couldn't pay me to do the legal work. I said, I'll take a piece of the action. So now I'm a house flipper. During that process, I met a woman by the name of Kristen Daly, who's with Success Real Estate. She's someone we'll have on the podcast. Probably one of the most successful or driven and successful real estate agents that I've seen on the South Shore. And she had her pulse on everything down there. So her and I teamed up. I was playing men's league hockey at the time with a gentleman by the name of Blake Littlewood, whose brother Steve Littlewood wanted to get into house flipping. So again, there's that little nudge. So we formed a partnership. It was essentially Kristen Daly, myself, and Steve Littlewood, and we went out and we probably flipped 15 or 20 houses on the South Shore. So I had that experience. So I knew the lending world from the legal side. I knew the lending world from using hard money to do fix and flip properties. I knew the fix and flip product. I knew the real estate market and teamed up with Chris, who knew the development side, knew the new construction side, knew the high-end market, and knew the Boston market because of his connections with the North End. So we teamed up in 2015, opened up crowd lending, and in 2016 we started raising capital and started making loans. It took us about a year. It took me about a year to get comfortable with raising capital from someone that wasn't me or Chris, and from figuring out exactly how to put that money on the street in a way that was both advantageous to us as investors, but also safe for any outside investors that we brought into the firm. So since that time, we've done about $250 million in lending, and we've raised about $30 million in capital. And so all along, I've had these little nudges, these little bumps that have sort of steered me through my career. And that's some of the stuff that we're going to talk about. We're going to sit with some other real estate professionals, other non-real estate professionals. We're going to probably talk a little bit of hockey, a big influence on the name and how the nickname Nudge and how it sort of carried through my lifetime has been hockey and in and out of hockey rinks and in and out of hockey locker rooms. I'm sure you guys that are out there that are in the hockey world know that nicknames stick, and everybody, if your last name's Burke, you become Berkey. If your last name's O'Connell, you become Okie, and everybody ends up with a nickname. Well, my last name was Najarian. I ended up with Nudgy, and that sort of carried all the way through youth hockey, high school hockey, now into men's league, and in and around sort of every environment that I'm in. That nickname has stuck. And in the coaching ranks now, as I said, I'm known as Coach Nudge, and most of the players that I have now just shortened that to Nudge. So you can see sort of the history of the name, and also sort of the history of the little nudges that I've had in my life that have led me to be sitting here in front of a camera doing a podcast somewhere where I never thought I would be, with producer Amy. Although I don't think I can call her producer Amy, because I think Bobby Bones' radio show has a producer Amy. So we'll have to come up with a nickname for producer Amy. She's Walsh. So as you guys, hockey guys know, or anybody knows, Walsh becomes Walshy. So that's her nickname. So the driving, the impetus behind the show was to share a little behind the scenes look at crowd lending, introduce you to some people that from all walks of life, and keep it light. Now, I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I know everything about real estate, that I know everything about hockey, that I'm some expert, because I'm not. I'm just another guy who's sort of making his way through life and has had some experiences that are funny, that are interesting. You may learn something, you may not. But in the end, I'm not going to come up here and preach to you about how to do things. I'd be more interested to hear your take on things. I'm going to give you my take on things. I'm going to have some guests in here that give you their take on things. But I think it's going to just be a place for us to share some information and get to know each other a little bit better. Let everybody get to know crowd lending a little bit better, and maybe make you laugh every once in a while. So with that being said, episode 1, we'll call it the intro episode. Episode 2 will be coming to you shortly. We don't know who's going to be on it. It's going to be a surprise guest. But hopefully you guys enjoy it, and you can reflect on your lives and the nudges that have helped you get to where you are. And remember, if you ever need a nudge, you can give me a call, because everybody needs a nudge.